Good evening. I'd like to call the study session for the North Augusta City Council for Monday, November the 14th, 2022 to order. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our City Administrator, Mr. Jim Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we have three items for tonight. One will be the review of the agenda for the City Council meeting for next week, followed by department details by our directors, managers, and then lastly, the Mayor's Matters. We have a presentation regarding North Augusta Tree Canopy Survey, which we have a number of our primary staff here to be able to walk the dog on that. So if you could, we'll head right into the council agenda for next week. And ultimately, what you're going to see on the agenda, are two items that are linked that are both important. And so I'll walk through the first one, which really is our next ARPA resolution, ARPA resolution number 4. So our previous ARPA requests to the council have been infrastructure heavy, and this is no exception. I would anticipate this will be the last of the major infrastructure ARPA requests coming before the council. And so previously, you've approved actions for wastewater, for water, some items in public safety and other related projects. And then what you have for this particular item really is focused on two things. One is for stormwater, and one is for infrastructure related to the stadium. So what I'll do is take a run at some of the items that we have here, and you'll see in Appendix A some of the projects, or three specific projects that are listed there. So I'll start with the first one under Stadium Improvement Fund. So as per our arrangement with the Augusta Green Jackets and through the Riverside Village arrangements we have, the city is obligated to contribute $200,000 a year towards what we call the Stadium Improvement Fund, which is designed, because the city owns the stadium, designed to maintain and improve the stadium as required. And so ultimately, what we are projecting is the ability to prepay, if you will, 3 years worth of Stadium Improvement Fund at $200,000 a year for 3 years, which gives us $600,000 to allow us to put that into the Stadium Improvement Fund, not having to put that burden on the Riverfront Central Core for the next 3 years. And the reason why we are proposing that is because Major League Baseball has added requirements to all minor league teams that are owned by Major League Baseball that have to be improved by either fiscal year 23 or 24. And so one of the major items that has to be improved in our stadium is lighting. So that's an item that's going to have to be addressed, and that bill is going to be at least $200,000 or probably more than that, along with the requirement for female locker rooms for athletic trainers, for the umpires, and for the associated staff. So those things are going to be coming up soon as far as bills that are required through that, and we're going to do that in partnership with the Green Jackets. But really what we're asking for the council to do is to approve the movement from ARPA to the Stadium Improvement Fund of that key $600,000, and then ultimately the Stadium Advisory Board, which is appointed by the council, will make those recommendations on how that money is to be spent. So I'll pause for any questions, unless Rachel wants to add in as well from her chair.
The only thing I would like to say is you have an updated attachment A placed at your seat at the dais. We have a slightly updated expenditure request form that references any agreements that require us to outlay this money. It references the resolution where you all agreed to make the contributions.
Is the stadium funding, is that just a set 3 years, or is that ongoing?
We are required to put $200,000 into the Stadium Improvement Fund for the next several years beyond the 3 years. But the reason we want to do it through this time period is, one, it meets the spirit of ARPA of making those payments prior to December of 2026, and then also because of what we believe the urgent requirement from Major League Baseball levied upon the Green Jackets and on the stadium owners.
But it won't stop after 2025.
It will not. But this is only through the ARPAs for this time period. After that, it'll revert back to the Riverfront Central Core for funding.
Is there a timeline on the requirements for lighting from the Major League team?
What I was been informed, Councilwoman, is that the lighting improvements are required by this coming season, so 2023, and that the lady locker rooms, I believe, are 24.
And what's wrong with the lights?
They do not meet the Major League Baseball stadium requirements, and I believe that has something to do with a standard that Major League Baseball wants to be able to televise or have the ability to televise a number of their minor league games, and that requires a certain lighting standard that is not resident in most of the minor league stadiums.
Because I know that was a big deal when we first built that stadium, the lighting, so
And I believe they're going to take advantage of the existing light towers that are there. It's adding additional lighting to those towers.
Were there at the time. I mean, I remember that being a big discussion.
Yes, Councilman. These are updated requirements from Major League Baseball, not the requirements that were in place at the time of the stadium being built and placed into commission. Subject to any questions on that one, I'll move to the second item on the Appendix A, which is the Mealing Track stormwater improvements. And so the Mealing Track is a piece of property that resides near the current North Augusta Public Safety Headquarters. It is situated between East Buena Vista and East Martintown Road. And so that property is slated to have a stormwater improvement project that was listed in Capital Project Sales Tax 4. That's listed as an approved project by the taxpayers as a stormwater, amongst the stormwater projects that are there. And so because of the impending development that's going to occur at that location, we want to be able to front load that requirement and enter an agreement with the developer to be able to do the stormwater improvements before they develop that land, which makes a lot of sense because otherwise we're going to be required to do a stormwater improvement project after the project's been built, and that will be a lot more expensive. So this allows us to get on the front end of this project. And again, I think this is something that was a voter referendum item that was approved through Capital Project Sales Tax 4. So this will remove that project out of CPSD 4 and allow it to be paid through ARPA in order to really accelerate that program, because the Public Safety Headquarters and the Bluff Avenue Connector are the primary draws right now from CPSD 4. And until those are finalized, we're not going to be able to pull any other additional funding out.
And the Mealing Track is now we'll call the Bluegrass Project, right?
That's correct.
So the only question I had was the difference between the 721 and the 400. That's coming from another.
So we're talking the pole branch, Mr. Mayor, or the Mealing Tract?
Oh, I just didn't see that. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm ahead of you. I didn't have that sheet.
I believe you're referencing a cost share between the city.
Oh, I got that. Sorry,
on
I'm
the pole
ahead
branch.
of you. Go ahead. My bad.
Okay. And the reason and how we came to the $600,000 is because that was the amount that was allowed for in the CPSD, at least our planning for CPSD 4, and that's been in our dialogue with the developer at that property.
So we fund that, and then they fund the rest of the project, correct?
We fund only $600K for whatever stormwater improvements are going to have they will perform on the site. Our engineers, Tom Zezer and crew, have the ability to quality control the work to make sure it is done to the city standards, to make sure that it's going to pass the stormwater that we require. And I think when you look at where the Greenway Bridge has been basically removed, you can see some of the silt problems that we have that basically come down Martintown Road, wash through the Bluegrass or Mealing Track property, deposit into the stream, and actually ends up going into the River Club with their ponds that are down there as well. And we've had some projects in the past to remove silt out of those ponds because they were deposited through, basically city action. So this is a project that, our engineering department's known about for some time and wisely put this in Capital Project Sales Tax as a requirement to get funded. But this will allow us to actually do it in a time compressed manner and do it in conjunction with the developer at that site.
Thank you.
Unless there's any other questions on the Mealing Tract item, we'll move to the third item here, which is the Pearl Branch remediation. So if you're familiar with where the Mossy Creek Elementary School is on Five Notch Road, going upstream of that, you've got the Rushing Waters development that comes off of Five Notch that's just south of Interstate 20. And so is that, again, another opportunity for the city as that development is going forward now. We've had some issues with the stormwater and runoff associated with the stream that goes through to Mossy Creek. That's caused a number of issues through the watershed there, to include impacting sometimes the sewer lines that are associated with that, and causes runoff into people's ponds and private property. I've actually received some correspondence from Representative Hickson about a constituent that's had issues that's near the Mossy Creek Elementary School associated with some of the problems associated with this project, or the lack of a project. So Tom Zeeser has done a fair amount of work along with Tanya on coordinating with the developer of Rushing Waters as they're moving into their next phase. We would have the ability to tackle this project, during development, where we'd be able to get this done in conjunction with the developer, as opposed to doing it on the backside once the development is finished. Again, we think this is a good project. We actually have an emergency grant from the National Resource Conservation Service, and so this would be a good partnering of ARPA dollars. Is not just a pure project, but a project that would be done with a developer and also with a grant share to allow us to get after this project, and also allows us to use city labor, if you will, to be a cost share based on labor rates associated with that. That doesn't carry all of it. That's why there's a financial component here. But that's the reason why we've got this in front of the council as well, because again, time sensitive, the development that's going in. So I think the last two, between Mealing Tract and Pole Branch, again, gives us an opportunity to do a project more cheaply now than holding off for a later date.
Jim, I know you were talking about rushing waters and that whole area with the swamp area at the bottom. Can the county pay for some of this? Because a lot of that watershed is not from the city side. It comes from the other side of Five Notch. Tom, am I correct on that? I don't know. But is there any way to get the county to fund some of that? Because not all of that's in the city limit that contributes to that stormwater.
That's correct. That there's, that watershed transits through both city and county. I don't believe the county has a plan, or a time-sensitive plan to address this problem currently. There may be some other projects we can partner with the county on. And I actually had a discussion with the mayor today about one of them. But ultimately, I think this is going to be a city action, because the developer that in play is actually in the city limits. Are there any other council questions or concerns or discussion items associated with this resolution?
Total project cost is $1.5 million, 1,560,000. So $721,000 is going to Satterfield Construction. Of that, 400 is 25%, which is the 1.5 is 400. That makes sense. And then the rest of it is being funded by a grant.
The grant funds all of the Cranston engineering
Everything
portion.
but the 400. Okay.
Correct.
Gotcha.
And part of this is contingency that the city requires for the project.
Yep.
So really, those two items on the agenda are linked. One has to happen before the other. So again, the reason why the ARPA expenditure is listed as number 7, and then this item next for the resolution 2022-54 authorizing the construction contract is number 8, is one has to precede the other.
And how much money's left?
So approximately
in the ARPA
1.8,
fund?
about $1.8 million, Councilwoman, for ARPA. That is unallocated at this time. If this
But that's
if this
not
passes.
including this.
No, that is including this.
Oh, okay.
I have one more question back up to the stadium one, just real fast. If I should have asked too, what if we don't replace the lighting? What is the protocol? Would they take the contract away?
There's a few things that could happen.
I figure it's a yes, but I just wanted to ask it and have it said.
Well, I don't want to speak for the team or for Major League Baseball Councilwoman, but there's always risk associated with not meeting the standards of a stadium for a Major League Baseball requirement. And so they can choose to pre-fund that or fund it if they wish, but that could also inform their decision-making on future actions with the stadium.
You might fend them off for a little while, but
So subject to any additional questions, those are really the major items in the city council agenda for next week. Okay, and with that, if there are no questions, we can move right into department details. Thanks, Linda.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Quick update tonight. We have a Cycle 1 disconnect. That's going to be Wednesday, November 16th, and also Thursday, November 17th. And along with that, we'll have Cycle 2's due date, and it will be November 17th. And that is all I have for y'all tonight.
Thank you, Linda.
All right. Followed by James from Public Services.
Good evening. Pleased to announce that our water distribution system flow and pressure testing will be completed this week. Staff has flow tested 967 fire hydrants and has 31 remaining. So everything's went well, got some good results from that, and we'll allow the system to settle down a little bit now and move on to the next program. Material recovery facility update. As of last week when y'all approved the equipment, I'd like to announce that Alert Construction has already been on site up in Aiken and is starting to disassemble a lot of the equipment. And they informed me this afternoon that they will be delivering some of the equipment as early as Thursday or Friday of this week. So that's went well. Staff this week will be making some concrete repairs on the flooring where the old equipment was at. All the old equipment has been removed, and we're anxiously awaiting the new equipment to sit on the floor. So everything's going well and looking up for our recycling program.
That's great. Thank you, James.
Next up, Tommy Paradise from Planning and Development.
Good evening. The Georgia Avenue Traffic Calming public meeting is tomorrow night. It's from 6 to 8 at the Community Center. And just want to mention that for those that can't attend, the survey is online. And as of this afternoon, we'd received 22 responses online. And then the Planning Commission is Wednesday night as well.
I would just thank you, Tommy, just for council. If you're not able to make tomorrow night, please do that survey because this is going to be coming back to us and we all need to be aware of what's happening. It's good for citizens to see us there. So if you can make it tomorrow from 6 to 8, I recommend you do it. If worst case, at least take the survey.
Next up, Lieutenant Vern Sadler from Public Safety.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Today we had our department golf tournament, which is why most of the hierarchy, well, that's where they're at, so you're stuck with me. That golf tournament is for benefit, a fundraiser to help families this Christmas. Tomorrow night at 6 p.m. at the Public Safety Hut, we've got the graduation for the Citizens Academy, our yearly Citizens Academy, so anybody that wants to come to that is certainly welcome. And lastly, we started our accreditation mock assessment this week, which means they're going to tell us where our shortcomings are so we can square those up before the actual assessment later on in 2023. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
And Parks, Recreation, and Tourism will be represented by Carl tonight. Come on up, Carl.
Good evening. We have our fall youth athletics and senior softball tournament wrap up last week. We had a good turnout at the Rotary Bowl with the football guys and the cheerleading gals putting on a good exhibition. It was a great turnout over there at Lions Field this past weekend. And saying that, we're registering right now for basketball through November 20th. Our crews are out putting out holiday decorations throughout the city over the next couple of weeks, and I ask you to circle November 29th, which is a Tuesday evening after Thanksgiving, for our annual Christmas tree lighting at Calhoun Park. Doing that, ma'am? Yes, ma'am. We usually start with 5:30 or so, and we're kind of at the mercy of the news station. We kind of coordinate with them for the actual Christmas tree lighting about 6:15.
Is that something y'all or will Rachel will put something on social media we can pass forward on the people? Is that already
Absolutely.
out? Okay.
We would. Yes, sir.
Promote it for you. Thank you.
Sure will. Yes, sir. And the last thing I have for you is Palmetto Beach Half Marathon will be going on Saturday, November 26th. It's they have a half marathon, 10K and 5K, and our runners will be utilizing the greenway for a few miles, and then mixing with public roads as well. Just want to make you aware of that. They're going to peel off the greenway around Knollwood subdivision and use Pisgah and come back downtown through West. So we got a good plan in place, and it's been a good event for a few years.
Thank you, Carl. Appreciate it, sir.
Next, we have Tom Zeser for Engineering and Public Works.
Just a quick update on the Greenway construction. I've been reporting for several weeks now that it's under construction, but I provided you all with some photographs to actually prove that that's true if you haven't been out there. But yeah, work is proceeding well. We've experienced really no weather delays. The soils are very workable, even with the rain we've had. And so we were actually planning this week to start installing the gravel base for the trail. So hopefully that will at least get underway this week, and the asphalt resurfacing or asphalt paving of it again is included in the alleyway paving contract that is out for bid, and we will receive those bids this Thursday. So again, everything's moving forward well, and we're hopeful for a ribbon cutting or some grand opening in the very early next year. The crews say that every day there's fresh bicycle tracks through the dirt, so it's being used regardless, which is a good thing.
That is awesome. Thank you, Tom, for all your efforts.
Last but not least, JD McCauley from HR.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just my bi-weekly reminder that we post new jobs every Friday, and everyone listening online at northaugusta.sc.gov/jobs. We had a great engagement at Aiken Tech last month. Junior Johnson and the recruitment team from Public Safety and Kayla Ferguson from the HR department were out there and interacted with the community, and we had a really great turnout. And then I'd like to also thank you all for approving the 4% COLA. It's going to help us out with recruitment in the coming year. We'll begin advertising those new rates in December for a January start. And then just save the date for Friday, December 16th from 12 to 1 at SRP Park. That's going to be our employee holiday luncheon where we do service recognition and employee awards. I'll be sending out an invite to y'all later this week, but it's, oh yes ma'am, December 16th is Friday from 12 to 1.
So that's what's going to take the place of what we did in here last year.
Correct. Now that we're able to get back together, we're going to take advantage of that opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you, JD.
Thank you, sir.
Looking forward to that. That's good.
It's at SRP Park, the WOW Club. We're going to take advantage of that.
And Mayor,
That'd be nice.
prior to how we've had it during COVID, it'll replace what we did at the community center that everyone remembers.
That's great. Thank you.
Are we giving our prizes and stuff away to employees? I mean, we're doing a big, like we used to do.
Plans are still underway for the
Huh?
event. Plans are still underway for the
I
event.
tell them we want it big and bad.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move on to item number 3. So we have one focus item tonight from the staff, which is the North Augusta Tree Canopy Survey. And we've got our A team here tonight between Tynan Strickland, Roy Kibler, and Michaela Kennedy to go ahead and give us an update on kind of their views. They provided an update to Rachel and I several weeks ago. Really informative, and certainly will help inform some of the potential future development and concerns the councils may have. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask them to come up and make their presentation.
Thank you for having us. We're so excited to be here. As Mr. Clifford explained, we have given this presentation or similar presentation, a lot more detail, a lot more information back in August, and you got that tonight in your packet. So that has got a lot of, if there's deeper probing questions, you'll find the answers hopefully in there. You also received the tree canopy. This is the study that was done that started this conversation and got us thinking about the bigger picture. And also, you would receive tonight just a chart that's in that packet that you probably can't read, important about impervious and disturbed areas in the city since 2010. And then also tonight, we did provide you with the surveys that Michaela's going to go over in depth. And there's a developer survey that we've surveyed the developers and their thoughts on this situation. We've also surveyed the public. And Michaela will go over that with you. Roy is going to go over the actual specifics of what he sees in the field and what our concerns are being brought to you about tonight. Without that further ado, I'll start. One thing I do want to mention is it is the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act. And that's a big deal to me because when I was a child, when I was a young lady, an 11-year-old child, that's when that act was initiated. And I remember back then watching the news, rivers on fire, all the terrible things that were going on. We were dumping sewage straight in the river, so was North Augusta. And that was a big problem that leaders like yourselves took on and said, we've got to do better for our future. And I feel like they've done a fantastic job. Whoever those people were that sat down and made those decisions have done a fantastic job because that's not what we see today. And this is a similar situation with our development pressures on the city of North Augusta right now. And we are thriving and we're doing wonderful. But I grew up in North Augusta, so I know back when I was little and 16, 15, walking the streets, this was all trees. My neighborhood I grew up in was Edgefield Heights. I guess that's the name of it, but Presley Avenue, that area over behind the Tractor Supply, all that was trees. And I would walk to Hardee's, which was down here at Belk's Shopping Center, to get hamburgers for 93 cents. And it was all trees. And tonight, in the last months and years, you've been hearing complaints from citizens. That pressure is coming in, and so we want to talk about that. Next slide. So we're going to talk about the tree canopy study results, the development pressures that we're all aware of, and why it's important that this conversation happens now. We're going to talk about the residential survey results, the developer survey results, and then steps forward, and Roy will talk about current practices. Next slide. Now, the tree canopy results are great news. We have 53% tree canopy. That is amazing. Greenville, I think, has 37% canopy. Charleston is as low as 15% in some areas, but overall, it's not as high as ours. Atlanta has a 67% tree canopy, which is amazing. They're one of the largest cities in the United States with that high of a tree canopy number. So we're in good shape. We're at 53%. And that is including development that has been approved but hasn't opened up. So we have got the Blanchard tract. We've got some tracts, up by Exit 1. So that 53%, that number includes those disturbed areas. The study also gives us information on how we can replant, and the study gives us maps and roadmaps showing where there's areas to replant in city-owned properties. So we could potentially get it back up to a higher number if we so desired. But after meeting with the administration, we're looking at a number that we would love to keep, 45%. So we know development's coming, we know it's happening, so how will we keep that 45%? And next slide, please. This is an example of what their study gave us, and we'll be able to take this information. Kevin Whaley was involved in this. He was on the team along with Tommy. And he will be able to take these data layers, I guess that's what they call them. He has a more technical term. And he can create an interactive system where we can all open it up, look at it, and see what we are. I just wanted to focus on Lowe's, Walmart, and Belk, just for now, because those areas are 0 to 15%. And if you get it at this canopy by parcel layer, you can see where the problem are. Okay, next slide, please. They also gave us this layer, which is streetscape, street trees, and where there's some, areas with 0% cover, the red lines, and how we can use those public right-of-ways to actually put some more trees back in the future.
Tanya, is
Yes.
that part of the first slide? You went through it fast. I don't know if it's in here. That first slide, you said there were 811 acres.
Yes.
We own. Your example here, the red, is that part of that?
That is part of that in most cases now. I wish, I don't see Kevin here tonight, so I was
Okay.
hoping he would be able to explain that
So
better.
those are the kinds of things where we own the land in those areas that we could plant
Public
trees.
right-of-ways, parks, green spaces that we own, all our city parks, all of our buildings and properties where we have land. There is a specific layer, and you'll see it in your packet for that first talk, where they talk about potential planting areas layer. We knew our time was limited, so we're trying really hard to get you the information that you can look at on a different time. But yes, this is one of those areas where we can make some improvements. Okay. This is a good example. This is one of my favorite examples because I had a meeting last week and I was sitting in the Belk parking lot waiting for the person I was meeting with, and I just noticed how bare it was, right? And these were pre-regulations and pre-things, pre-development code parcels that don't have a lot of things. They don't have stormwater either. And the importance of this conversation is very well described in the earlier presentation, so I didn't want to go into all the details of that. But this is a good example of an area, a right-of-way that we could actually put some trees in. Next slide, please. This is me looking just straight across the street at the bank, Security Federal Bank. They have 4 trees there. And look at the tree canopy that those 4 trees provide. I mean, look, it's going out over the lanes of traffic. So it doesn't take a lot to make a big difference. Next slide. So with that, our development pressures have been happening mostly on the other side of I-20. And we haven't heard a lot of too much conversation about that and social media posts about that because that area was bare, it was forest, right? So those developments came in. We were out there building and disturbing acreage, but we're not hearing a lot of complaints. Now we're starting to come inside the city proper, tracks near Knollwood, and we're hearing a lot of people concerned because now it's actually in their backyard. And like I said, when I was a child, I could walk up and down the streets and shoot trees, and now the city's a totally different place, and that's okay. We just have to do it smart. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michaela to talk about the survey results. But these areas, Wando, Bergen, Gregory Landing, and those areas, Rushing Waters, Roy's going to spend a little time talking about those red hot.
Can I just say one thing?
Sure.
Back to that Belk slide, that
Right.
nothing. But also, I think we have to remember, you don't want to cover businesses either. Because when I'm in Hilton Head riding around trying to find
We
Wendy's,
just came back from Hilton.
I can't find it.
Right.
I mean, it's so horrible.
Yes.
I want us to have trees, and that's beautiful. But I also don't want to cover the businesses, so when you're riding down the road, you have no clue where Belk is or the Y or, to me, we got to be a little careful with some of that.
And let me point out, there are some, the National Forest Service or Forest Commission, they have some standards they feel like are adequate for business and areas like that. And their standard for that on this side of the country is 15%.
Yeah.
So we're not looking for 45% cover in those areas, just 15%, a small number. Right now you're seeing in the Belks, it's a 0, right? That roadway was 0 in that area. So there's hot spots where we can just plug in a few trees.
Tanya, when or Roy or whoever, when you say canopy, is that a certain type of tree? Because I know a lot of our right-of-ways, especially like over by Palmetto Parkway and Exit 1, there's, palmetto trees. There's some down here. Would that count as it, or are we actually looking for something that creates a big canopy?
Canopy is everything.
Yeah, you're looking for a deciduous tree with a canopy. Your palmetto trees do not give you the canopy coverage that a deciduous tree would.
Okay.
And we've allowed them in some that are dropping, acorns, you know, and that could be dangerous, you know, to automobiles, especially, you know, on a sales lot. So, but we, you know, there's a place for those. But for the most part, you want a deciduous, you know, canopy tree that's gonna have at least a 30 to a 40-foot spread.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Next slide, please. So I'm a graph person, so I wanted to give you guys some pie charts to look at. These give us some estimates on what we used to have, what we currently are looking at, and what we could potentially see in the future. So this graph, before I go into the details, we made some assumptions on the data we used to look into the future and look back into the past. Those assumptions include that we're working with 14,000 acres in our city right now, so we used that number for our future estimates. No new land has been annexed into the city in these estimates. That also includes an assumption that all disturbed area that we are using from the graph you received today was previously tree-covered area. It had a tree canopy at one time, and most of the development we see now removes most of the trees, if not all of them, so we remove all the trees from the development when we use disturbed acreage. So we used disturbed acreage as the number of trees removed, which is pretty accurate sometimes, but not always. The third assumption is that it does not account for trees that were replanted, but our number of trees replanted is about 1%. So looking at these graphs, remember it's a very small percentage that we replant. And the fourth assumption is that future estimates are based on a 112 acre per year loss of tree canopy coverage. That's using all the tree canopy coverage data we have and averaging it together to get 112 years or 112 acres per year. So in this current pie chart you see in 2006, we estimate we had about 65% tree canopy coverage, and the 35% that wasn't covered with tree canopy, that could be impervious surface, that could be rooftop, roadway, right-of-way that's plantable area, or even water. So I mean, it's variable what that no canopy is. Go ahead. It's an animation, so you have to click it a lot. Okay. Two more. And the last one. Yes. So this is what we currently have in the city right now. So we had no tree canopy on 35%. So between 2006 and 2020, we lost about 10%. In 2021 alone, we lost about 1%. And in 2022, if all projects that are approved are built to completion, we will lose about 1% this year as well, leaving us with a good place to start at 53% tree canopy coverage from now until the future. So looking ahead, with that 112 acre per year loss, we're looking at, you can go ahead and click twice, an 8% potential loss in the next 10 years, and another 8% in the next 10 years. So in 20 years, we will lose 18% of the tree canopy with the current practices using today. And this is an estimation, so I understand it could vary. And that leaves us with 37% tree canopy coverage, which is quite a few percent below our target of 45%. So this is 2006. The next one is current. You can go ahead. And then this is what we're looking forward to in the future. And that's in 2043, so 20 years from now.
Does the loss, are you including, you said, the 800 acres that we could add to it? That's not including that. That's just stating the numbers being cut.
Correct.
Okay.
That's not including, if we go above 1% replant, that would be amazing.
Does this include, in these numbers, like some of the neighborhoods, they do have trees, you know, Hammond's Ferry, for instance, comes to mind, you know, all those trees were planted, and that, I think that would start between 2006 and 2007. Does that include the trees that are being planted in that place, or?
So yes, in the tree canopy we have currently, those trees are counted.
So for the most part, 1% a year, not exactly, but 1% a year is what you're expecting,
Yes.
give or take, your loss, yeah.
At the rate that we're developing.
Right.
So if we have a downturn, right now, we're at
Maybe 20 years from now.
So to put that into perspective, between 2006 and 2020, that was about 85 acres of loss a year. And you can go to the next slide, and I think it shows you. Yes, between 2006 and 2020, that was about 85 acres a year. You can see how it slows down a little bit, the growth rate. And then in 2021 and 2022, we pick up again to 1% per year. Does that answer your question? So this is just a different way of looking at the data. And it shows you that between 2006 and 2020, we lost about 1,356 acres of disturbed area that we are assuming was trees before it was disturbed. And we have the potential to lose 2,237 more acres of trees or disturbed area in the next 20 years.
I'm curious, when's the last time y'all did this survey or presented this information to a council? How many councils back? I mean, has council ever, back when Lark was here, did they ever have this?
This is the first ever tree canopy assessment that I know that City of North Augusta has had done.
it's a push across South Carolina.
Okay, thank you.
So we've looked at ways and thought about and sat around and talked about and discussed with the GIC, that's the Green Infrastructure Center, ways to kind of mitigate the loss. So we've looked at creating a tree fund, impact fees, conducting tree surveys, establishing tree protection zones, and on and on. We're looking at all kind of ways. And those discussions are being had now with the development review and with administration. And we're working on specifics on what would be the best approach and how we can reach that and what it's going to look like. That'll be presented later at the next meeting, the Envision meeting. Hopefully, we'll have that information then.
Tanya, I meant to ask Michaela, I'm curious, do you have a number of how many people responded to the surveys?
We do. That's coming up next.
Okay.
Okay, next slide.
Let me
Again.
go back one more thing for you.
Okay.
You go back to the slide you just had.
Okay.
So I think one thing that would be helpful also is if you are able to kind of give us some examples of communities that have used some of these ideas.
Sure.
So I'd love to know, who's using a tree fund program, and if so, what does that look like? We learned a lot about impact fees, but to me, the tree fund program, I see on here you've got some, let's see, you said something about developers in here somewhere else, but anyway. But it'd be helpful, maybe some of these, to know what other communities have done and what kind of results they've
And we've
had.
looked at that.
That'd be helpful.
And there are some amazing websites.
Yeah.
Savannah's website is incredible. Their tree canopy website.
Because I think it's interesting, you talk about Atlanta and these large cities, with the growth that comes in large cities, being able to preserve canopy, you would think that would be something we ought to be able to balance
Right.
in our size.
I think you're right.
Is this presentation given to the Development Review Board, or will they have access to
We
it
have
before?
requested that, and Tommy is trying to arrange that, or the planning commission. Yes, that is our next stop with this presentation.
Somebody just mentioned Savannah. My daughter's at school down there, and I was just telling David, I said, I bet they're probably close to 70% their downtown area. I
They
mean,
have an amazing-
everything is shaded. And to Pat's point about covering up businesses, I think a lot of it's just them old live oaks and magnolias and things like that doesn't block the view.
Right.
I could go for something like that. I think that might be something to look at because, that's a beautiful city down there. And, my daughter, she goes to Oglethorpe Park and there's trees and green space. I mean, it's a beautiful city. And if a city that big could do it, I don't see why we couldn't either.
That's a good example. Okay, so in the report that you got from the GIC and the Forest Service, They gave us some marching orders to kind of engage residents in the survey, and we've done that. Educate, meet with stakeholders, we're doing that tonight. We've done it with the administration. We're also trying to engage developers, so we've already done that. We've created a survey, we sent it out. We got 6 responses from the major developers, and those responses were positive. And then create and implement strategies, we're working on that, and we're going to try to continue to educate and meet with stakeholders on the development pressures, including the developers, and then continue to monitor the canopy. With that, I'm going to get Michaela to go over the survey results.
So Tanya insisted on using me as scale. So I'm holding the pile of
That's
surveys, and it's very nice to get that many back. We got 794 as of now, and still come in every day, which is pretty cool. That's a significant sample size, meaning that those are meaningful results, that information should convey the opinion of the large majority of our city. We even had 339 comments, which I will write up in a report and organize in a fashion that you don't have to read all 339 comments. The survey was from a scale of 1 to 7, 1 being the least and 7 being the most, whether that be using the words importance or concern or supportive. You have a copy of the survey if you need to reference one of the questions. The next slide, please. So I wanted you to see all the questions compared to one another. So on the y-axis there is a question number of the survey, and on the x-axis is the average ranking from the public. These are averages, so it doesn't tell you the whole story, but it gives us enough to work with this evening. The black line in the middle at 4 is neutral, so you can see that not one question is below 4, so the vast majority of residents either consider it important or of concern, or they are supportive of those questions being asked there. I wanted to group them by color to show you what we were asking about in the survey. So in the light blue at the very bottom, you have clean drinking water. That is our go-to. Everyone in the city, with the exception of 2 people, voted that it was of 7 importance. So that is our go-to. That is what we are comparing everything to. And you can see how natural lay of the land falls above the 6, which is what I would consider very important. 5 would be somewhat important, 6 would be very important, and 7 being extremely important. They're all pretty important according to the residents.
I like the little one all the way up to 6.5.
Yes, they're very concerned. So using this data along with the developer survey, we wanted to give you a common ground between the residents and the developers, and then coming in with us as the city to kind of find the easiest ways to mitigate some of these issues. So if we start with what we are all common ground on, it should be relatively simple in theory. So residents care most about clean drinking water, and then wildlife habitat, shaded walking trails, which was specifically mentioned as the greenway, but others as well, pollution, erosion, and litter, buffers around water bodies, and developmental buffers. So we're all concerned, developers and residents and the city, so we're starting from a good place, as Tanya said earlier. We have 53% tree canopy cover. We have the support of you. We have the support of you all. That's why we're here today. Thank you so much. And we also have residential support and developer input. Question number 14 on the developer survey, so you can skip to the next slide. And the next one is about considering to extending rear buffers of lots and trees. So I skipped to number 14 so that I can compare it to the residential survey on question number 8 that references wildlife habitat. We have a 70% extremely important rate from residents on wildlife habitat. And number 15, which references buffers around water bodies at 64%, extremely important. And question number 6 on the residential survey are development buffers. That could be buffers of trees planted in between developments, like between a house and a house, or between a commercial property and a commercial property, or commercial and a residential property, or even between water bodies and like wetlands and streams.
People don't want to see their neighbor's house in their backyard.
It's-
Developers are
it
saying they
seems.
agree with that.
It seems. Which is okay, we can work with that, because by switching one rule of buffers, we may be able to save or recover a lot of the tree canopy that could have potentially been lost. So if we extend buffers of between developments, which is currently at 0, and buffers around water bodies, which is currently at 25 and sometimes 30, if we extend those buffers, they could count for trees in developments, or they could count for trees protecting water bodies.
Give me an example of what you're talking about on water bodies.
Right now, our buffer is at 25 feet from the edge of the high water mark. So if you're at the Savannah River, you can't develop in that 25 feet. But if we extended it to 50 or 60 feet, that's 60 feet of trees that would allot for a lot of our buffer or canopy. And if it were between commercial and residential lots, we don't have one currently, but we could potentially.
Development code buffer is 0 for, is that what you were just mentioning?
Between developments.
Between developments.
Correct. And with the survey data from the public, from the residential, we want to combine it, again, find this common ground, and then work towards better practices in the field. And Roy is going to go over those practices and how we can change them.
Thank you, Tanya and Michaela, for helping with this presentation. And some of the things I want to kind of just briefly hit on is, again, what I'm seeing out in the field. If you go to the next slide. And some of the costs that we're seeing. Just currently, tree replacement, if trees die and trees have to be replaced, and this is an average of $415 per tree. Gregory Landing, if 35% of their trees need to be replaced because they don't meet our specifications, that's $23,655 that's got to be spent. And again, the average 26% of the street trees don't make it through the performance or the maintenance guarantee. There's a performance bond of 2 years, and then there's a maintenance bond, a maintenance guarantee of 2 years. And during that period of time, the city does not touch any of the street trees. And at that time, there's no maintenance done to any of the trees. So that's a crucial time of the tree's life. So if there's no maintenance done, when we come to do our inspection at the end of a maintenance guarantee, and the trees are deficient, damaged, sick, unhealthy, they're going to have to be replaced, because it's just like the trees are like are part of our infrastructure. A cracked sidewalk, we're going to require a developer to replace it. It's no different than the trees. The city's actual cost, our cost that we go out and we replace trees, is about around $730. We're buying more quality trees, higher quality, because we know what a street tree standard is. And currently, again, with the development code rewrite, we're trying to bring that in and hone that in to really what we're looking for a healthy street tree. Next slide. Sidewalk repair. These are numbers that are continuing to rise as far as the cost of replacing damaged concrete, especially with trees without tree root barrier. And again, that's another implementation that we're trying to implement in the new development code rewrite to help us cut down on this cost. Because again, that's an expense that the city has to endure down the road. Next slide. This is kind of a display. The developer submits a a street tree plan. It gets approved. The builders build the homes on the lots, and the builders are their landscapers are the ones putting in the street trees. The developers aren't putting the street trees in on the front end. And so the problem is the builders don't see this plan. So they're not looking at tree species. They're not they just want to know what they need to do to put in the ground to get that CO. And that's what the builders are looking at. So again, this is something that we need to kind of redefine and bring in so that we don't end up with monocultures of the same tree species in the same development, street after street after street. Next slide. Quality, you've got in the planting buffer or planting strip is 5 feet. And then on the slide on the right, the picture on the right shows 1 year of growth. There's not much difference. And again, the planting strip we're requiring large street trees in a planting strip that is sized for a small tree. That's a problem. So we need to fix that. If we're requiring large trees, we need to fix our PD that our right-of-ways are wider to accommodate a large street tree. Or we recommend small trees instead of large trees. So we've got to bring that into the requirements meet what we're specifying.
And our code says, this example, that's a street tree, right?
That's a street tree, yes, sir.
And every subdivision has to have street trees. Could they instead of placing a street tree, can they place it in the yard, and then we wouldn't have to deal with it?
That would be called a subdivision tree. So
Okay.
at the time of when they submit their plans, they can either choose street trees or subdivision trees. So it's up to the developer, whichever they choose.
All right, so we don't determine that.
No, the developer will determine whether they want to.
As far as for the city's perspective, if you did a subdivision tree versus street tree, we're not going to be coming back in 4 years and taking ownership of it,
That's right. It would, the subdivision tree would be on the specific lot.
Educate me on I'm assuming the idea of the street tree is just the idea of a canopy growing, it's
cover
pretty.
Over the road. You drive down a street and you've got canopy cover over the roadway. You've got shaded streets, shaded sidewalks, and just the fact of how much heat that it's going to reduce having the large canopy trees over the roadway. That's one big factor for the street trees. And aesthetics, how it looks, how a neighborhood looks. I grew up in a neighborhood in New York, and we had street trees. We had 15-foot wide planting strips with nothing but large maple trees, both sides of the street, and they stretched over the street. So, I mean, in different geographical areas, that's what they do. It's all up to preference what y'all would like to see in the city as far as street trees versus subdivision trees.
Mayor,
Either one.
if I could, understanding too that the street trees that the cities then will take responsibility for will maintain them. They will remain in place. A subdivision tree on a private lot could go away at any point.
And that wouldn't help our tree canopy. If a homeowner decided to just cut it down, they could because they didn't like it. Or if it died, they may not replace it. The street tree, if it dies, we're going to replace it. So that's.
Do we have, and it's probably more detail than I should be asking, does our code have pictures? I guess, is it subjective as far as when we go out to say, hey, a tree may die in 3 years, it doesn't look good, or do we have things that say, you see this, this, and this is telling us this tree is going to, you see what I'm saying?
Yes,
Are we that detailed in our code, or is it more just your,
It's got to be a healthy growing tree with no defects. no presence of insect, disease, or decay. And that's stated in the code. So if the trees are cut and on the bottom from line trimmers, you can tell, you know, whoever's been cutting the grass, whether it be the homeowner, and they use a line trimmer or a contractor, and the whole tree is got line trimmer marks, you know, 2 to 3 feet up the trunk of the tree, it's going to have to be replaced.
So like you said, the developer just wants to get in, that they can open up the subdivision, the landscape, the folks doing it. I mean, that's part of who we need to be communicating with, right? And educating. Because if not, they put in this tree, and this tree a year in starts having problems, and we're saying, hey, we're not going to do that maintenance guarantee unless you fix it, and the developer can't build, they can't put the cost to the development's already been done. You know, it's 2 or 4 years.
They don't. Now they put up. What is the cost that they put up for the maintenance guarantee? 15%. So they put up 15% of the tree cost in the development into a maintenance guarantee into the city, and so the city holds those funds until after the maintenance guarantee is finished. If tree inspections, if the trees fail, if they're dead, damaged, decayed, fallen down, broken, and the developer does not want to replace those, the city can use those funds to replace the trees. And we've done that in the past. From Wando Woodlands, we've done it several times in that development.
Let me just ask one question. Are we covering ourselves? The 15%, I take it the assumption is 15% of the trees won't make it, and that's why we are requiring a 15% letter of credit or whatever it may be. Is that enough?
No. Okay. It's on the average, it's 26% of the trees in the development don't make it.
So it appears we need to look at that. Plus also, you were saying the cost that we're showing that the developer is paying to put the tree in is half of what we're paying when we put it in later, so we're not protecting ourselves up here.
And that goes back to the quality of tree that they're purchasing. They're buying from a re-wholesaler. We're buying straight from a nursery, and buying quality nursery stock.
And the one other question I would have, the length of the maintenance guarantee, is it long enough? Are we having enough time there to really determine whether the tree is going to survive or not?
I think the question would be, I think it's too long, because the problem is during that period, the developer is not undergoing any maintenance on the trees whatsoever. We've got next slide. I think there might be a picture. Yeah, next slide. Here, the photo here on the left. That arbor tie has been on that tree for 2 years. It was on the tree when I did the inspection for the performance bond, and when I went back to do the inspection 2 years later for the maintenance guarantee, the arbor tie is still on the tree. It was noted, and when I do the inspections for the performance guarantee, if you have arbor tie on the trees, you've got to remove it. That arbor tie is only good for about 6 months until that root ball gets established, and then you need to remove it. Any longer than that, it's going to girdle the tree. If the tree has girdling marks on it, it's going to be rejected, because that is a weak part of the tree. The tree will never heal from that. And that's where it's going to break when we have an ice storm, hail, thunderstorm, hurricane come through. That is where that will be the weak point on the tree stem.
Roy?
I would think in our development code, if we could, if there are steps we need to make, it almost makes sense to put that on the front end so the developer can bake that into their cost. Because if I'm a developer and I do phase 1, and then 2 years later I'm moving to phase 2, and there's 20,000, that's straight out of the developer. I mean, they they can't go back to those phase one people.
Right.
So I would think that would be some conversation we would want
The-
to
the-
look in, talk, I would think.
I know.
Because they would be more I would think they'd be more willing to, like everything else, they're going to make it into the cost of the house on
And
the
that's
front end
exactly what
versus.
they're doing. That's what
yeah.
they're doing. You know, and it goes back to the builder, and they're tacking it onto the lot, into the house sale.
So, Roy,
Yeah.
well, that was kind of, I was going to get to the question because of the issue we've had in Hammond's Ferry, and I know that was a tree the developer chose. You know, would it be simpler to have a landscape plan that has to be approved with what types of trees? You know, if we're going to be taking them over, you know, you might specify, okay, we want a dogwood or something that's not going to, maybe that's a easier way to do it when they come in. It has to have a landscape review.
Yeah, they do have there is a site plan, street tree layout plan that is approved, which is this.
Right.
But the problem is, the builders don't see this. And what
Okay.
species? Yes, they are. When we do the review through Track It, but the developers aren't sharing this, or it doesn't get conveyed to the builder. And you, like Tanya said, you have multiple builders in different subdivision. Austin Heights, there's what, four different builders in there. So that's one thing that needs to get fixed. There's almost like the developer doesn't have a stake in the game at the beginning with the street trees.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think it's communication and putting something in place where there aren't surprises 2 years down the road.
Right.
Well, which is probably what we're having. So we've got to balance because we want growth, but at the same time, there's an issue with the tree canopy. So, this issue is something this city has struggled with back many, many years ago between the city and planning commission when it came to mass grading. And that's a whole other issue, but, we don't have that issue. I mean, we don't have anything against that, which brings this whole part of what we're talking about now.
Full circle, and
yeah.
this is why we're here. This is because we know we see a problem. We want to do a better job of the development of the tree canopy that we have, putting it back. That's the big.
On this right here, I'm just going to throw an idea out there, because the developers come in, they give the stuff to Tommy, it gets voted on, whatever, they move on. If y'all were to review their tree plan and then call your nursery and say, hey, I need 200 whatevers, charge the developer up front for those trees, and as, they're finishing with their CO, we take it to their landscaper. And that way we know it's a healthy tree, and, it will be consistent, and, all the things that, to me, that sounds like the simplest solution.
Yeah, with the tree fund, that's what we're trying to do is we would want to plant more than just 2 trees at one time, because it wouldn't be cost effective to ship just 2 trees. We wouldn't want to ship whatever we would need for whatever phase is going on and being developed at that time, and plant the trees at the appropriate time. A lot of the time, these trees are going in the heat of the summer. If they're on a corner lot and it's part of the right-of-way, there's no water. So the trees aren't getting water, and that's part of that's another issue. If the trees aren't getting watered and they die, they've got to replace them. Those are things we need to look at. Next slide. This is a quality issue. Trees on the left, you can see the fork in the top of the tree. There's no main dominant leader. And again, a 5-foot planting strip, and those are some willow oaks there. And again, on the tree on the right, you can see how the tree has kind of pushed out at the top, and it's bushy at the top. The main leader has been cut out in this tree, and that's what caused the multiple growth of the leaders at the top of this tree. And that's a practice at that specific nursery. Nursery practices, as far as pruning, it all depends on what they're pruning the tree for. They're pruning that tree to have a large canopy head that is going to sell at a garden center. That is not a quality street tree. A quality street tree, you want clear trunk 5 feet and then have another 15 feet with tree canopy. So that's, and again, the trees behind that, as you see, they're branched all the way to the ground. It looks like a Christmas tree, but that is an actual willow oak. So that's the inconsistencies in the tree quality that we're getting. And again, it goes back to different builders and the builders not seeing what tree species is specified for that actual street. Next slide. Again, this is just another example of the same thing. These trees were just planted after that photo was taken. And again, there's no main dominant leader in the top of that tree, and it's probably about 8 feet tall. And it's already bushed out into the sidewalk. You can't walk down the sidewalk without brushing up against the tree. And so as a street tree, you want to be able to walk down the sidewalk. You want to be able to park on the street and be able to get out of your car or push a stroller down the sidewalk and not be impeded or impacted by the street tree. And so, and especially with no maintenance being done on these trees for 3 to 4 years, it just causes more of a problem. Maintenance is crucial in the first several years as far as pruning on a young tree's life, and again, we're missing that window when we don't do any maintenance at all on the trees until after the maintenance guarantee's up. Next slide. You can go. That's continued more inconsistent tree quality there. Next slide. And again, you can see as the trees are in stress, they die back from the top. They die back in from the lateral branches. And again, those are trees that are slated to be replaced that wouldn't pass our inspection. Next slide. This is, I went back and we found this slide in 2012 on the left, Bergen West. Those are live oaks. And again, a 5-foot planting street. They're 2 inches in caliper. The slide on the right was taken this year, last week. The trees are 9 inches in caliper, which is a difference of 7 inches in 10 years. That's not an optimum growth. And again, you know, planting a live oak in a planting strip that's 5 feet wide is not adequate. And live crown ratio, you want more. You want at least 60% live crown ratio is ideal for urban street tree.
What's the caliber mean again?
The caliper is the size of the tree that it goes in. It's planted at 2 inches on the left, and on the right it's 9 inches. So that's how many inches the trunk has grown in that 10-year period.
What would you say in a 10-year period? What in this example?
An
what should it have
average
been?
for live oak is at least an inch to an inch and a half growth in optimum growing conditions. So it should have been at least, 14, 15 inches in caliper. But again, it's restricted because it has sidewalk and a curb, and there's compacted soil around that.
Does look better than the other one.
Next slide. Okay, so these are some just before and afters of good quality street trees, and these are trees that the city installed from Select Nursery. The Tree Plaza, Jefferson American elms were planted in 2019. This photo was taken in 2019. They were 3.5 inches. And in 2022, they're 8.25 inches now. And you can see the growth. And those trees are in silvocell, so it's a little bit, the growing conditions are much better there. because they're in constructed soil. The trees on the right, that's Esplanade Way, and those are center willow oaks, 3.5 inches on 2018, and in 2022, they're 5.5 inches. But you can see the shape and the quality of the tree, the clear trunk and the life current ratio is optimum with those willow oaks, and that's what you want to see for a street tree. That quality, that's what we're looking for. And again, you know, if we moving forward with the development code, this is what we want to try and perceive if we're going to continue to have street trees, is to try and fine tune those details so that this is what we're getting. This is the end product that we're getting. Next slide. Again, high beam overcup oaks. You can see the growth, the difference between 2018 and 2022, 3.5 inches compared to 7 inches there. Again, 3.5 inches of growth. And again, you can tell by the body of the tree, the canopy of the tree, how much healthier those are. And those are trees that are requiring, that are getting maintenance, adequate tree maintenance on these trees. During the period of drought, they're getting watered, they're getting pruned, so that again, it takes care to get a premium street tree. But once you get it to that point, you've set it structurally so that it's going to continue to grow, and we'll be in good shape. Next slide. The data is clear, you know, that we've provided in our report. We want to continue to grow our tree canopy, and I think that's the goal. And what we can do and try and find new and innovative ways for us to reach and maintain our 45% tree canopy. And we've given the information to everybody, so you know, and we hope we'll come back and we're going to do some more reports on what we can do, as far as we'll do some more research on the tree fund, and try and provide more information to the Planning Commission and Envision, so that we can try and fine tune our code and our requirements, so that we can, you know, reach a large street tree canopy over the city.
Maybe there's a timing question. Are we trying to get some of these things implemented in our new development code, or is that something we'd come back to give more time? A combination?
We are looking at some of those issues. We spent about 3 hours on the landscape chapter at the last meeting. One of the things that I think, as far as the tree canopy goes, is in the previous, in the new development code, there'll be, right in the current development code, you get no credit for an undisturbed open space. You get 0. And in the new development code, what was recommended by the committee last meeting was to give them a 3-to-1 ratio of meeting the open space requirement, to try to preserve some open space and undisturbed area. So that we've been working there, and we went through a lot of these issues during the last development code meeting.
Okay, good.
I know it's a lot of information.
I think it's good stuff.
And
I
we
appreciate it.
y'all giving us the opportunity to speak.
Roy, this isn't really a question, just more of a comment. I have so many people that, you know, aren't from here or have just moved here. I mean, our streetscapes that y'all do are phenomenal. I would love to see more. You know, we just moved into River North. There's a beautiful one right outside there, you know, that the city maintains. I would love to see more of that. I know it costs money and manpower and things of that nature, but that is one comment I get. You know, like my father-in-law still lives in Columbia County. He comes over here and he says, you know, you cross over that bridge. He said, it's beautiful. So, I mean, good job to you and your crew everywhere to our in our city, the entrances are beautiful, and I'd like to continue to, do that. It makes me proud to live here. You go to other places, you don't see that. And I know what you're talking about with the tree canopies, because I'm thinking downtown Savannah and South Boundary and Aiken. It's kind of cool to go through there. The pecan trees up in Trenton, just all cool things. I think that would be something that we need to look into. But just kudos for everything y'all done with the landscaping. It looks great.
All three of y'all, great. You got something else you want to say?
Oh, no, I'm
I thought, great presentation,
Thank you.
great information.
And the surveys, Michaela's working on an executive summary of all of that information. She'll get
I think we'll have time to digest, and I mean, I've got a couple thoughts myself. I'm just holding it to myself now, but I think you've given us something that we can work with and work toward. And we got to balance it, I'll just tell you, but I like good information. Okay. Thank y'all. Really appreciate your time. Took a lot of effort here, and I love the fact that 3% of the citizens did the survey. That was good. Well, I mean, 3's better than 0.
Mr. Mayor, that concludes the staff portion of the meeting, and I turn it back to you.
Okay, I've got just a few announcements. Anything? Pat, what you got, girl? Nothing? Okay. So I did want to say, I think Carl mentioned November 29th, our Christmas tree lighting. I do want to let y'all know that we've got 3 neat kids. Ethan, Ryan, and Madison, the children of Jen and Michael McCauley, will be flicking the switch for the Christmas tree lighting. So I'm really excited about that. I think they're excited about it. So, and then for citizens, after the Christmas tree lighting, the downtown will have the Cocoa Crawl. So again, great opportunity to go in downtown. We got Third Thursday coming up. And again, we've been sending out on Facebook for the folks watching live stream, Georgia Avenue traffic calming study, and there's a survey. This is a major thing that's going to impact all people who live in North Augusta. So I'm telling you, if you can't make tomorrow night, please go on and do the survey. Tommy has worked hard to get that survey out for us. So we need more than 23 people to do it, because when this all comes down, we don't want everybody to be coming to us, down the road and say, we know anything about this. Okay, we've been hitting this hard, social media, telling people about it. So citizens, this is your chance. You need to come out and tell us your thoughts. So with that, that's all I got. Anything else? We're good. Thank all of y'all for what you did tonight. It was a great job. And